I know you're very focused on getting people to register to vote and use their voice. Has it been extra fun to be around other young people during a year like this where everything is so kind of heightened?
It is. A common thread has been that I don't think young people aren't engaged, and I am excited that we're moving past that conversation, because so many times it's like, how do we get young people interested in politics? I feel like at this point, it has affected so many aspects of our lives that I really don't know a young person who thinks that, like, oh, this doesn't affect me, because we've seen it firsthand. But it's been a matter of then answering the question and figuring out the answer for myself of how do we increase access to actually being in conversation with our government and with the political systems that are supposed to be in place to hold these infrastructures accountable. And it's been an exciting year of ideation, especially because this is, I think, voting is a place in which all of our separate interests come together, in which we're voting about the environment, we're voting about social inequities, everything that you could possibly think of is kind of comes together in terms of how we vote. And that's been most inspiring, because I think throughout the year we've seen many movements led by young people pertaining to different things, and this is the one platform in which we're all consistently having to come together.
Absolutely. I think on that note, we have another question. Courtney had a question about using your voice.
Yes.
Hi. So
Hey.
my question was actually very similar to Brittany's, but I was wondering what advice you would have for people for young people especially, who are just starting to find their voices and navigating like PWI spaces, figuring out how to get comfortable with being authentic in their voices,
Right.
Without not being completely not concerned with pushback, but how to rise above that.
Right, and that's something I think I deal with regularly, especially in the social media ethos, is that it's not one for conversation oftentimes. And so as young people, we're not given many spaces that we have access to in which they're genuinely meant for conversation, and people are genuinely sitting here to hear what you have to say and then constructively respond. And so part of that for me has been trying to figure out how to create those spaces. And a lot of that has really just been through friendships, of finding those spaces in with friends. The one thing that I had at home and have at home that I'm really grateful for is the space in which our dinner time conversations were literally just talking about how we felt with the world, about the world, and that's where we had our rough draft conversations. And really my piece of advice, and it may sound hypothetical, is figure out who you can have those rough draft conversations with. I feel like it's a faulty misconception that as soon as we step into the world with an opinion, it should be fully formed and backed up, because we're still figuring out who we are, and we're getting new information about how we interface with the world every single day. And I see oftentimes that need to be extremely decisive really affect our ability to fully form our opinion and be comfortable with the evolution of our voice. And so for me, it's been encouraging that conversation in friends, even if it's like, okay, hey, I'm struggling to figure out how I feel about this, is really how most of my conversations start with my friends. And usually, sometimes we get somewhere really constructive, other times we're like, okay, we have to come back to that. But that's been really beneficial, especially in this day and age in which there's something to comment on or have an opinion on every single moment.
It's a good question. I think that's something that you have to continue to work on too, like having that open dialogue and not judging people, you know, like you don't always have to agree at the end of the day.
Right, I
think people have to remember. My
papa always says, my grandfather is like, you could look at somebody and say, you might be right. In your head, you could say you're probably wrong, but you can say you might be right. And that's the importance of having a constructive conversation where the goal is not to persuade somebody, but to ultimately evolve in your opinion. And I'm not saying this in that you should entertain points of view that are antithetical to your very being, but I think in terms of just everyday conversations, it's important.
That's dialogue.